Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the June 18th, 2014 meeting of the Frederick County Planning Commission. Would you join us in a moment of silence, please?
Here it is.
Thank you. There are no changes to the agenda.
Madam Chairman, move for adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We have minutes of May 7th and May 21st.
Madam Chair, move for the adoption of the May 7th minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Madam Chair, also move for adoption of the May 11th minutes.
21st. Say,
I've been a little bit bigger.
Okay.
May 21st.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. I think we have some committee reports. Mr. Thomas, the Economic Development Commission, please.
Yes, the Economic Development Commission met last week. One of the significant discussion items was on small businesses in Winchester and Frederick County, and I thought it was interesting that 87% of the businesses employing in Frederick County, 87% of the businesses employ less than 25 people. So small business is a very significant part of our economy and a very important part of our economy. And the Economic Development Commission, over their 20-plus years of being a group, has had a significant role in helping to set up those businesses and coach and mentor them to be successful in Frederick County. Frederick County also has a much higher success rate for small businesses than the rest of the country. So we've got, the Economic Development Commission has done a great job over the years. Now, having said that, unfortunately, the June meeting was the last meeting of the Economic Development Commission. The name will be changed to Economic Development Authority, yes. Be a name change, a mission refocus, and the membership will change for the authority. So more to come on that in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Moen, comp plans?
Yes, Madam Chair. The Comp Plan Committee met earlier this month. We only had one item on our agenda, and it was a sewer and water service area inclusion request, a comp plan amendment application for the Blaine properties in the Stonewall District. It was a pretty straightforward request. It's an area already included in the Northeast Land Use Plan, and the committee was in full agreement that it should move forward for full consideration by the Commission and Board. I believe it'll be coming to a joint work session of the Board and Planning Commission sometime shortly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Unger, the Sanitation Authority meet?
We're meeting next week.
Okie doke. We do have a representative from the City of Winchester, Ms. Martha Schickel. Would you report, please?
Sure. We had a meeting yesterday, actually, where we had 3 public hearings and one that was continued. Just briefly, the first was for multifamily housing, a conditional use permit for 5 2-bedroom apartments up atop the Goodwill Industries building on Millwood Avenue. So that was a forwarded recommendation for approval to the council. The second was with regard to inclusion of Wick and Cameron Street in the zoning ordinance related to corridor enhancement districts, and we also forwarded that on with an affirmative vote. And then the third public hearing was with regard to an amendment to the comprehensive plan, primarily due to amending the comprehensive plan with regard to the location of the new John Kerr Elementary School and siting of that property within the zoning district. So we also forwarded that on with an affirmative recommendation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Sure.
This is the time on our agenda when we open up our meeting to any public comments, citizen comments on anything but public hearings. So if we've got a public hearing scheduled for an item, please wait until that time. And any other subject that's on your mind that you'd like to share with us, we invite you to address us. Anybody? Oh, seeing none, we will close the citizen comment portion. Our first item is a public hearing item, and it's an ordinance amendment to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 165 zoning, Article 5 Planned Development Districts, Part 502-R5 Residential Recreational Community District, and 165-502 6.05 design requirements. These proposed revisions are to remove the requirement that the R5 communities must be age-restricted communities to qualify for private streets, inclusion of additional design standards for private roads, and maintenance responsibility of the private roads by the Property Owners Association. Before we get started, and Mrs. Perkins, we are glad to see you all here. It's been a long time since we've had a filled room, so this is comfy. This is really comfy. But since there are so many of you, we're going to go with the clock, if you don't mind, during this public hearing session. And so you've got 3 minutes to share with us your thoughts. So Mrs. Perkins will guide us through.
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself due to potential conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Mohn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. This is a second request to allow the use of the private streets for all types of developments within the R5 Residential Recreational Community District. Now, currently, the use of private streets is only permitted in the R5 district within age-restricted communities and only if approved by the Board of Supervisors. Now, the amendment would allow the use of private streets within all types of developments, but would still require a Board of Supervisors approval. Now, the applicant's request included the following modifications to the original text that you saw with the first amendment request. Now, first is the requirement that the development must include a minimum of 1,000 lots. Second is a requirement that the paving designs based on actual CBRs and they be provided to the county for approval. Now, if approved, the amendment would apply to all land zoned R5, and the developments that are currently zoned R5 are Shenandoah, Lake Holiday, Shawnee Land, Mountain Falls, and Autumn Hills and Timber Ridge Estates. Now, while these developments all currently use private streets, it should be noted that there are some large undeveloped lots within some of these developments that could potentially request the waiver. But a new master plan would be required for any future developments, and they would still need to seek a board approval. So just some history for this second amendment. The board discussed this at their February 12th, 2014 meeting, and that's where the board sent the request to the Transportation Committee for discussion. The Transportation Committee discussed this in February and April. At their February meeting, they sent it to the DRRC, and in April, the Transportation Committee sent it back to the Board of Supervisors. The DRC, at their February meeting, they discussed this and expressed concern about the maintenance of the private streets and the potential for HOAs to go defunct and then request the county to take over the streets. The Commission discussed this on May 7th, and you also expressed concern about the maintenance of the private streets, as well as requests that the construction meet VDOT horizontal and vertical requirements. So the Board of Supervisors then discussed this at their May 28th meeting, and they did send it forward to public hearing, but they also expressed concern about the construction of the roads and the maintenance of the private streets over time, as well as some concern about narrowness of private streets and on-street parking. So as I stated, during the Planning Commission and board discussions, the issue of meeting all VDOT requirements was discussed. So what staff did, we put two options in the agenda, in the text. There's an option 1 and an option 2. Now, option 1 is the applicant's request, which requires that the road section meet the minimum VDOT thickness requirements. Now, the option 2 is that it would require that the road sections meet all VDOT requirements. So tonight, we are seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission to either forward option 1, which is the applicant's request, or option 2, which is what staff has included based on the comments we've heard. So we're seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors on one of those options. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions of Mrs. Perkins? Any? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. The applicant would like to speak. Sorry.
Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name's Ty Lawson, and here on behalf of the applicant, the property owner and developer. And I do appreciate Candace condensing the record. We've had quite a record. We've participated in numerous hearings, been before you all on numerous occasions. And I think it's important to remind ourselves of the mission, or what is before you, and that is to create or to give recommendations to the board to create an ordinance that allows for private streets, not only in age-restricted communities, but also in others. non-age restricted communities, but more importantly, to simply to get the opportunity or to have the opportunity to appear in front of the board and ask, under certain circumstances and with certain criteria, whether those are going to be acceptable to allow private streets. We're all very focused on, of course, Lake Frederick and Shenandoah. That's who we are. That's who we represent. But Candace correctly pointed out, it's an ordinance that could impact other R5 areas. And again, all the ordinance is to do is to allow a party to appear at a later date in front of the board, present their specific situation, their criteria, what they plan to do, whether they've met certain standards or not, and then the board would decide whether it's acceptable or not. And I think that's important because I was looking back over the ordinance that already exists, and the language is there that requires certain VDOT standards be met, that a program for the perpetual maintenance of all street is provided, and then again, those words, which are acceptable to the Board of Supervisors and the Transportation Planner. And with that ordinance in place years ago, a prior applicant and developer applied to the board and was granted approval to build private streets in what's now called Shenandoah. And so now we page forward, and the request is to be able to open it up and to be able to appear again and ask for permission. And along the way, we've heard comments and we've made suggested revisions to the ordinance, and we put in more and more standards that we intend to install anyway, and so we have no problem putting them in the ordinance. Some of them have come from you all, from comments, and certainly from various committee meetings and the like. And they all key on the quality of the road, the depth of pavement, the maintenance is going to be kept up, that engineering standards are going to be maintained, and that going forward we're going to demonstrate financial worthiness so that we can assure the county that they did the right thing, the board did the right thing when they granted the approval for the private streets. I think that's where it ends there for the purposes of this hearing. There may be other issues, there may be other comments that are specific, and that would be assuming an ordinance is allowed and permitted. We do intend to appear back before the board and talk about our specifics and ask that they find that it is acceptable to complete this community, which, by the way, we're projecting it because, of course, it's already started as age restricted. It's already started with private streets. If we were not allowed to have private streets, it's going to end up somewhere in the range of 20% public and 80% private. That's going to be a mess. It's going to be very confusing to figure out where one begins and one ends. And again, what this applicant wants to do is to be able to finish it. With regard to standards and qualities and assurances that it will remain in good operating condition, we're fine with those. We've put those in our draft ordinance. Where we do have an issue, though, is the one add-on that staff put in, which was as a result of a comment that we received, I think, the last time we were before this body, and that is not only that we meet or exceed the vertical, but also the horizontal of a public street. And I believe that was put in so that basically we will install a public street and keep it private until such time comes as there's a failure and it's going to be accepted back into the public system. Again, I think we've deviated a little from our mission and the intent. We do not want to have public streets. We're fine with designing to exceed or meet the public street standards so that it will last, so it'll be durable, so it'll hold up, so it'll be easier to maintain. But we do not want to create a street that government can come back in and take over. I know that that's kind of a popular thing with some folks, but it's not with us. And frankly, I don't think it's popular with this community as a whole. We don't want government to be able to take this back over. So our one pick, if you will, with the multitude of record that you have before you is that we don't want to build a complete public street so that it can be taken back over. We intend to keep it as it is, and there are several folks here, and they'll speak to what they've managed to do and how they are keeping these streets up, and maybe a little bragging too. They do quite a fine job, and when it snows, they'll tell you whose streets are plowed first, the private streets are, and so on. And that is what we want to be able to continue. We believe it speaks to quality. It will elevate the quality even further still of this community. And again, maybe that's the next hearing, but we look forward, after this ordinance has been passed, to appear in front of the board and present all of our bona fides, all of our standards, and ask them to accept that our standards and our systems are acceptable for them to allow us to finish this community with private streets. Be happy to answer any questions and respond to any comments.
Any questions of Mr. Lawson?
Thank you all.
sir. Thank you. This is the time for the public hearing, so for those of you who would like to speak with us, come to the microphone, give us your name and magisterial district, and for this evening, limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. So come forward and...
Madam Chairperson, Commissioners, good evening. My name is Charlie Harmon, and I'm a resident of Lake Frederick and Opakin District. I'd like to speak on the private road request for our Lake Frederick community, currently before the county. I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of the residents in our community. A number of them are here in the audience. Raise your hands if you're from Lake Frederick, just to show the numbers that are here. Our current residents all bought their homes expecting a private, gated, age-restricted community of some 2,100 residences. The advantages of such a community were reinforced to us when on November 29, 2010, the County Board of Supervisors held a community forum at Lake Frederick to, among other things, stress the benefits of private streets that would enable creative designs such as narrower streets, on-street parking, enhanced street-side landscaping, and landscape central parks. However, given the recent changes in market conditions, we realize that completing the full development of our community will require addressing the market for both age-restricted and non-age-restricted homebuyers. The ordinance change and waiver requested by our developer, Lansdowne Development Group, will enable us to keep the gated community design that we all bought into and will avoid what could be management and coordination challenges in a mixed community of public and private streets. Consider, for example, the challenges associated with managing snow removal. With a mix of public and private streets throughout the community, VDOT and our private contractor will have to determine at various intersections where one's responsibility ends and the other's begins. Similar issues may arise on maintenance of signage and streetlights. Now, we fully understand the financial obligations of the HOA for private street repairs and maintenance, and we all bought our properties with full disclosure of those obligations. We have for several years, under the guiding hand of a knowledgeable and experienced Budget and Finance Committee, been building our long-term reserves in anticipation of those expenditures. We continue to work with the developer and builder to assure that the build-out plan for the community will be done in a manner that will ensure the HOA's ability to fund all its obligations, including the reserve funding for private street maintenance and repairs. As evidenced by the turnout you see here tonight, this is a very important issue to our current community and to the future growth of our community. We urge the Commission to send a positive recommendation on this matter to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration in public hearing at their July 9th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, who would like to come speak?
Madam Chair, Commission members, my name is Michael Ryman. I reside at Lake Frederick and Opakin District. While we recognize that the county must consider zoning ordinance changes in the context of both present and potential future developments, The specific request before the Commission has a reality and urgency affecting the interest of all current and future Lake Frederick residents, and I will speak to those interests specifically tonight. As mentioned, the county originally approved private streets and gated access for a community of 2,100 homes at Lake Frederick in 2001, with approval of the MDP submitted by the then owner of the property. The essential elements of that plan remain today in number of homes, amenities, and the desire of both developer and residents to develop a gated access community. What has changed, as mentioned by the previous speaker, is that the marketplace has spoken. The experience of the preceding developer demonstrated that completing the community in a time frame acceptable to developers and their financiers would require addressing two separate market segments in parallel, the age-restricted market and the non-age-restricted home buyer. Responding to that message, and at its core, the only change Lansdowne is requesting to long-standing county approvals for this community is to enable them to apply to the county to build private streets at Lake Frederick for both these classes of homeowners. Let me also point out, as Ty mentioned, at completion, over 70% of the homes at Lake Frederick will be located on private residential streets under existing county approvals. That's adding together the age-restricted sections and the townhome sections in the non-restricted neighborhoods. The requested ordinance change will enable Lansdowne to apply permission to construct private streets for the remainder of the development, and most importantly, for the main connector road between the Route 522 and Route 277 entrances to the community. With this change, it will allow us to retain the gated community design we all bought into, and will avoid the previously mentioned management challenges for the HOA dealing with a mix of private and public streets. Let me finally address the stated concerns about the HOA's ability to fund private street maintenance. Initial financial studies from two separate sources have indicated that funding street maintenance reserves in a steady state environment at build-out for our HOA would require approximately 6% of our annual fee budget using the current homeowner fee level. We have annual fees of $3,420 a year. That may be quite a bit more than you see from many of these other communities. With this 900 some odd homes that are now projected for the age restricted, we'll be dealing with a budget in the excess of $3.2 million, and the funding of the reserves are estimated to be in the $170,000 a year basis.
I hate to do this to you, sir, but the red lights come on.
Okay,
So
yeah.
could you just bring it to a close?
I am done. So I just wanted to say that the overwhelming number of residents support this, and we urge your forwarding a favorable recommendation to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Richard Seton, and I'm a resident of Lake Frederick in the Opequon District, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. About 35 years ago, I was the clinical director of the Woodstock Mental Health Center in the Northwestern Community Services Board, which was based in Winchester. I knew back then that this was the region in which I wanted to live, and my wife and I have been fortunate to be part of this area for the last 7.5 years. I'm also now serving on the board of directors of Habitat for Humanity, Winchester, Frederick County, and I'm chairman of their Family Services Committee. I'd like to reemphasize a few points made by our earlier speakers. That's another way of saying repeating. First, the county approved the private streets and gated access for about 2,100 homes at Lake Frederick as early as the original MDP in 2001. The only change, and all that Lansdowne is requesting, is the ability to submit an application to the county to provide private streets for both the age-restricted and non-age-restricted homes at Lake Frederick. In effect, at the highest level, not much else has changed in the plan since that early MDP. It will still consist of 2,100 homes. Total paved streets will be about the same. The amenities will be the same, and in some cases better. Importantly, the HOA and the residents are no strangers to the challenges and benefits of private streets. We currently have about 4.8 miles of private streets, all built to VDOT-based standards. We have a solid grasp on the necessary requirements for reserves for these streets, both from formal cost and reserve studies and from the considerable prior life experience that many of our residents bring with them. Now, we all know that the county has had some previous negative experiences that may have you appropriately questioning our request. But I believe that each situation needs to be measured and evaluated on its own merits. If we were to just accept a bad experience as predictive of all future ones, there are a number of us who might never have gotten married or who might have bought a better car. I, for one, am glad that I gave my love a second, albeit different chance, both with my wife and my automobiles. What I'm saying is please don't equate this community's situation to those of the past. There are significant and substantive facts that are clearly different, and we ask that you look at the differences, not the similarities. Therefore, representing the overwhelming majority of residents of Lake Frederick, we respectfully urge the Commission to send a positive recommendation on this matter to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration at their public hearing of July 9th. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Next, please. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, Commission members, all. I would like to thank you for providing us with this opportunity to come before you and speak this evening regarding the issue of private streets for the Lake Frederick community. My name is Kevin Wallach. I am a retired attorney, having spent the last 28 years of my career in the financial regulatory world. Along with my wife Margaret, a retired accounting manager, we are residents of Lake Frederick in the Opequon District. My wife and I welcome and embrace the diversity that a mixed age-restricted and non-age-restricted community will bring. And as has been underscored by many urban sociologists, as early as Jane Jacobs and Edward Banfield, we believe, in the long run, it will enrich our lives and those of others in our community. We also support the developer's desire to build out such a mixed community with gated access and private streets. As previous speakers have indicated, we believe an integrated private street development will provide benefits to all homeowners, will eliminate complexities, and avoid challenges in the governance and day-to-day management of the HOA. In a broader demographic and economic perspective, we read with interest John Martin's reported comments at the recent spring dinner of the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission. In brief, Mr. Martin's key points were: aging baby boomers will fuel the area's economy in the short term, but younger, lifestyle seekers will become an increasing percentage of the area's population over the next 2 or 3 decades. Boomers are redefining what it's like to grow old, looking at the promise of aging, not the problems of aging. Younger lifestyle seekers are looking for places first, career and jobs second. They want a sense of place and community, carefree living and sustainability. That, I submit, is exactly the 2 classes of home buyers our mixed community has been designed to address. And given these broad demographic trends, I submit that the Lake Frederick development may well be, if not should be, the model for future planned communities in Frederick County and Northern Shenandoah. Finally, allowing private streets for such a community will align both costs and benefits with the residents of the community. In an age where less and less transportation funding will be coming from the state, such an alignment is surely a more viable option than relying on the county's general taxpayers to fund the maintenance and repairs of public streets. We respectfully request the Commission send a positive recommendation on this matter to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration in public hearing at their July 9th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Madam Chairman, Commission members, my name is Dr. Carol Dela Cruz, and as you may have guessed, I reside in Shenandoah in the Opequon District. I don't want to reiterate all the points made by my predecessors, but what I will say is that we're from out of state, and we selected this community because of all that it offers. And the fact that it was to be a gated community was a large part of our decision. In 2012, I was a member of a redevelopment study group that worked with several other members with Lansdowne with regard to their purchase of our property. And we were not in agreement of all of the changes that they submitted with regard to their plan, but we did come to agree that in order for them to meet the requirement or the desire to have a 2,100 family community, they would have to, in tandem, offer both age-restricted and non-age-restricted homes. The other thing we all agreed on from the very beginning was that we wanted our homes and our community to remain with private streets and a gated entrance. This was very important to us and to a number of our other residents. We presently have 2 age-restricted sections. One of them has private streets and is gated, and the other one has private streets and is not gated. We really want our community to be one of inclusion, not exclusion, and this, as we are right now, it really is very difficult for us to feel like we're a cohesive community. Not to mention, or has already been mentioned about snow removal. That's only one aspect of the challenges if we have 72% that are private and 28% that are not. In addition, HOA governance would be an issue. The original developer was granted the ordinance for the private streets throughout our community. The only thing that's different is that some of our members will now be non-age restricted. So I'd like to dispel the misconception about us. We are an active adult community. Many of us have 2 cars, some have motorcycles. We travel, play golf, bicycle, kayak, work, volunteer, and engage in multiple activities every day. We will not be very different from our other neighbors. We urge the Commission to send a positive recommendation on the matter to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration in the public hearing on July 9th. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker? Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, Board, I'm Bob Suchan. I don't have any really prepared notes like my esteemed neighbors. To take the whole idea from a different perspective, and that is if we do not get private roads, if it is not approved, there is a message being sent to us and to the rest of the folks in the area. Oh, by the way, I'm a Vietnam veteran, combat, retired military. Probably over 10% of my neighbors are also veterans. One of the messages that's going to be sent to me is, I came back from Vietnam, got a kick in the teeth, I'm getting another one. And I understand there is another community in the area that's screwed up, didn't take care of their roads. The developer left. Okay, who's being punished? Those people aren't in jail. We're the ones being punished. This is the other message being sent. That's all I have, ma'am. Have a good day.
Thank you. Please, please. This is a public hearing. It is not a show. And so, sorry, I feel like a den mother. Anyone else like to speak with us? Anyone? Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Chris Baltrop, and I'm also of Lake Frederick, the eastern side. Many of the people here supporting us are from the western side of Lake Frederick, which will stay private roads regardless of the decision that are made here. But it shows the support that we all have and the integrity of the community. I'm also a retired bank vice president and government foreign service officer. I'd like to focus very briefly on what happens if this is not approved. We live on Tudlow Lane, which ends in Rachel Carson. If Rachel Carson is converted to a public road, then you have a series of side roads that are private, that have direct access to a public road, particularly the people on the corner will be paying the cost of maintaining the private roads, yet not have the advantages of being on a private road system because they'll be right next to a public road. And I think that is eminently unfair. And for that reason, I hope that you do recommend approval of option 1 here in the recommendations that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak with us? Anyone? I mean, you all came? Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate your remarks. I will say that the Commission's point at this point is to look at the ordinance. And you all have spoken eloquently about gated communities and the joy that you obviously have in yours. Our concern is the ordinance. And the ordinance as such, we need to vote whether to forward it with a positive or a negative recommendation to the board. But we also have to make a choice between option 1 and option 2. And those 2 options really deal with how the roads are constructed, not that they'll be private or public at this point. So, well.
You're closing the public hearing, I presume.
Yes, I am close. Thank you for reminding me of my responsibilities.
And I guess you looked at me because I'm the one that's probably the most vocal on this
Yes.
subject. I'll start off by saying I truly believe that a gated community with a diverse population will have a very good quality of life, and I think would have a better quality of life probably than just an open community without the gates. And I think the diversity of having an age-restricted, even though a very active age-restricted community with another community is also a positive for a gated community and will result in a very high quality of life. I've been very vocal on meeting VDOT standards. For the last 15, 20 years, we've been talking about this. And I've been vocal the whole time on it. And Ty probably has maybe swayed me a little bit with some of his discussions. And what I would like to see in this, and I'll say after working with contractors and lawyers for over 42 years, I have learned that the use of the English language has to be as specific as mathematics. If we are not extremely specific and very clear in our ordinances, we will not get what we want. Not that your developer would intentionally do something that we don't intend in the regulations, but there's a whole lot of developers out there and a whole lot of communities. So I would support this change. However, I would want to have 5 very specific items in this. And what we have there now, I don't think gets us there. And I originally crafted, was part of the wording of the original ordinance that over the years we found was a little on the weak side. My 5 very specific items that I would want to state in there, and I'm willing to change some of the words, but my wording would be the private roads have to meet VDOT standards for the following items. Number 1, structural section design. Number 2, material composition and quality. Number 3, construction standards, techniques, and workmanship quality. Number 4, drainage and stormwater management systems. And the design must be certified by a registered professional engineer. All the design, testing of materials, and in-place quality testing and as-built drawings for the road system must be submitted to the county and certified by the developer and the professional engineer that they meet VDOT standards. With those 5 items, I would definitely support this. And just to give you the reason I want those 5 items is because you folks are very mature in your experiences, your lifestyles, but I'm thinking forward. And if you build a road, if the developer builds a road that meets these standards, you won't have any maintenance for the next 20 years. Yeah, you might have one pothole here or there, or if somebody has a flat tire and runs their rim through the road, you're going to have to fix it. But for the most part, you're not going to have any maintenance for 20 years. After 20 years, if you do very minimal maintenance on the road, it'll last another 10 to 15 years with minimal cost. So if you build the road to these standards, you folks and the people who buy the homes from you folks and the younger people that move into the other area are not going to have a significant capital expense for the next 20 to 35 years based on the roads. If you don't do it this way, 6 years from now or 8 years from now, you're going to have gravel roads busted up that none of you are going to be happy with. So that's my comments. I'll totally support it with those 5 conditions in there. I don't like the way it's written as far as a condition meeting CBR standards. California bearing ratio standards don't really get us to where we need to go on this. That's only part of the design, part of the construction testing. So, with very specific verbiage, I'll be very happy to support it, and I think it will be a great community, and I think you folks will like living there. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yes, Mr. Oates.
I'm in full agreement with Mr. Thomas, because both options, the one thing that I didn't like in either was paving designs based on actual CBRs will be provided to the county for approval. I don't think it's the county's place to approve or deny the CBR testing. It kind of implies that we're accepting the road or approving the road. And this is a private road, it's your road. I don't see where the county needs to put their nose in that part of it. I do agree it needs to be as built and referred to the county so we know what's there for fire and rescue and everything else. But yeah, I'm in full agreement with Mr. Thomas on this. I think that should be option number 3, the 5 items he pointed out.
So, any other comments? Yes, Mr. Unger?
Just one question with what Gary and Roger have brought up. If it's going to be private streets, who's going to monitor to see that it's being put in correctly?
The PE. The contractor has to hire a professional engineer to monitor it, certify it, provide the designs, copies of all the testing, as-built conditions, so he will have to certify it and the builder will have to certify it. So unless the professional engineer wants to perjure himself and lose his license, he's going to have to certify that it meets VDOT standards.
Okay, and to follow up with that question, would the roads be narrower than what they would be normally? In other words, I think the roads were going to get narrower before. Is that an option? Can they still do that? Or does it have to be the width that was originally for VDOT?
Actually, VDOT's got some standards for alleyways and narrower streets already, so they could follow those.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with narrower streets if they wanted to do that. But I do agree with everything else you said about that.
I believe you can get down to as narrow as 18 feet on the road, which is pretty tight.
Yeah.
Depending on the traffic load.
Yeah. And a lot of the horizontal standards, there's a lot of different thoughts out there now about how to control speed. And if you have a wide viewscape, speed tends to go up. Back to what Ty said, if they don't build them on a width-wise that can be dedicated to the state, they are in perpetuity committed to maintaining those streets because the state won't take them. They're not going to go in there and take down all the houses on one side of the street to meet the horizontal design standard. So this ensures, with the structural section that meets it, they get the quality and the durability. The horizontal section ensures that it's never going to be part of the road system. So they're going to have to pay for that as long as those streets are there. And I don't have a problem with that because, I've been in a lot of different communities now that have the narrower viewscape, and it really provides a different mindset. So it reduces the speed. It makes people kind of slow down, talk to their neighbors more. It also encourages more of a bicycling and a riding or a walking community. I mean, it's certainly up to the developer, but I would hope that they put in bike paths and walking paths for our active, mature population. But that's up to the developer. But I've said enough, I guess.
Anyone else?
Yes, with what Roger said, if it's got to be VDOT standards, that's what kind of tricks me with, if you're saying VDOT standards and VDOT makes you put in a 40-foot road, but they want a 20-foot.
I'm saying VDOT vertical structural standards, not horizontal.
Okay.
There's width standards and there's structural standards. I'm interested in the structural standard, the material quality that they use. I don't want them to meet the structural standard, but then go in there and put in aggregate or bitumen or something that doesn't meet the quality standard for VDOT. But as long as they meet the quality standard, the strength standard, which is your vertical structural section, I'm okay with it, because that's what determines your durability. That's why I put in the second part that I think we had left out before when I put in material composition and quality. Because as long as they use the materials that meet VDOT standards and quality, we got the durability then. Whether it's 12-foot wide or 18-foot wide, it's going to be there a long time.
Anyone else? I have a technical question, and I'm looking at Mr. Lawrence, and that is the suggestions that Mr. Thomas has offered, which I see a lot of head nodding. Are we in agreement with the all five? Are we in agreement on all five, and can we do this because we haven't advertised?
We can accommodate it.
Okay.
If the motion ultimately goes that direction, we can accommodate it. We'll write it that way and still take it to the board with your
Okay. So, Mrs. Perkins, I'm trusting that you copied down all what Mr. Thomas said. I'm sure you did.
Plus it's recorded, right?
Yes, it is recorded. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to consider on this item? Well, I think we ought to do something.
This is a Pekin district. So, Madam Chair, I move that we send a favorable recommendation to the board for private roads in the R5 zoning district with the following 5 qualifications: that the following items all meet VDOT standards: structural section design of the roads, material composition and quality, construction standards, techniques, and workmanship quality, drainage and stormwater management systems, and that the design, testing, material testing, in-place testing, and as-built drawings be certified by a registered professional engineer in the state of Virginia and the builder that it meets VDOT structural and quality standards, and submitted to the county engineer and the county planning department.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Mr. Unger?
Unger, yes.
Marston, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Votes yes.
Thomas, yes.
Bolden, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors. I have a date on July the 9th. So thank you for being with us. Oh, may I, sir, Mr. Lawrence, may I put an addendum to the record? We do have communication from Larry and Janice Atkinson, and I would appreciate being able to add this to the record. Thank you. Okey-doke. Our next item is also a public hearing. It's an ordinance amendment to the Frederick County Code, Chapter 165 zoning, Article 6, Agricultural and Residential Districts, Part 402, RP Residential Performance District, 165-402.09 Dimensional Requirements. And this is a proposed revision to reduce the minimum front setback for multifamily residential buildings from 35 to 15 feet.
20.
That's what I thought.
Yes, it
I'm
says
sorry.
15.
Oh, clarify.
Okay, it means 20.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we mean 20? That's a good thing. Thank you very much. All righty.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. As you stated, this is a proposed revision to the front setback for multifamily residential buildings. This is a new housing type that was added to the RP district revision that was approved back in 2013. Now, if you may remember back during the discussion and public hearing process, a high-density residential streetscape section schematic was provided that showed how this housing type could be developed. Now, the schematic provided a multifamily building with a front setback of 12 to 20 feet. Now, that was included in your agenda. However, the text adopted for multifamily residential buildings required a 35-foot front setback, which is contrary to what was shown during the initial discussions and shown in some of the pictures that we had taken from other localities. So now we have an applicant that is trying to implement the housing type, and they have requested that the setback be reevaluated. So the proposed amendment before you would reduce the setback from 35 feet to 20 feet. Now, the DRC reviewed this at their March 14th meeting, and they recommended the reduction to the 20 feet. And the commission discussed this at your May 7th meeting, and the board discussed this at their May 28th meeting, and they sent it forward to public hearing. So with that, we are seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the board, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions of Mrs. Perkins? Sorry, Candace. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. This is also a public hearing. Are there any folk who would like to address us on this? Any? Well, we will not use the timer if you choose to do that. So, okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. And let's see, we have a little discussion and we have a little action to take.
Madam Chairman, if there's no discussion, I recommend we move this forward with a favorable approval.
Second.
Second.
Any other comments to make? Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Molden, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Oates, yes.
Private, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Ambrosi, yes.
Marston, yes.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors also on July the 9th. So, our next item.
Madam Chairman,
Sir.
I'll need to recuse myself from the next master development plan discussion because I represent an adjacent landowner that's affected by this. I'll also need to recuse myself for number 8 and number 9 on the agenda as well. However, since this is not an actionable item, I will be representing both landowners at the podium in case there's any questions. If this was an actual item where there was a vote, I definitely would not, but since it's only here for information, I will.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. The next item is a master development plan, and this is for I guess, are taking a look at this. 03-14 Madison Village, submitted by Painter Lewis, PLC, to develop 51.26 acres of land zoned RP Residential Performance District with 640 residential units and townhouse and multifamily, and 5 acres of land zone B2 Business General District with commercial uses. The subject property is located on the west side of 522, approximately 1,000 feet south of the intersection of Route 522 and the Airport Road in the Shawnee Magisterial District. It's identified by property identification number 64-A-18. And as our notes say, this is for informational purposes only. Perkins.
Again, thank you. As you stated, this is a proposal to develop a piece of property that was rezoned back in 2013. Now, of the site, 46.26 acres are zoned RP residential performance, and that will be developed with a maximum of 640 townhouse and multifamily units, and then the remainder of the land is 5 acres of B2 business general property. The location map is on the screen to your left. As you can see, the site is outlined in black. We have Route 522 that fronts the property. Now, the yellow portion of the property is the residential. Of course, the orange is the commercial. And this is a master development plan that was included in your agenda. It shows the internal road networks. It shows the land bays as well as the interparcel connections. So the Madison Village development will have one signalized entrance on 522. It should be noted that the location on the master plan has been shifted south due to entrance spacing requirements, but the modified entrance is still in general conformance with the generalized development plan from the rezoning. The master plan, as I stated, also depicts the connections for adjacent properties that were proffered with the rezoning. So the master plan for Madison Village is in conformance with the zoning ordinance as well as rezoning number 3 of 13. This master plan is presented as an informational item. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Mr. John Lewis is also here on behalf of the application.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions for Mrs. Perkins? Is that Mr. Unger, or are you?
I was going to ask John, but I'll ask Candace. The adjoining landowner there, did we get that worked out to where he can get in and out okay?
He has been provided interparcel access in 2 locations that was required by the proffer.
Okay.
Any other questions?
It was a big hang-up before, wasn't it?
Let me ask you this, where is Phase 1 of the road, if somebody, since we've got a change, where does Phase 1 begin and end?
Jen, do you want to come up and you can draw on here the exact limits? You can draw on there. Just draw.
Okay. Good evening, I'm John Lewis with Painter Lewis, here to represent the project. In answer to your first question, Phase 1 is going to end right here.
Okay.
So we will be building, obviously, the intersection at 522, the entrance to the first roundabout, and then north to the northern property, meeting the approved master development plan for Russell 150. And then we will build to the south to that first intersection, which will allow us to develop a number of townhomes and part of the multifamily.
The only reason I asked is the comments that were made by the school folk who are wanting some way of getting their buses turned around.
More than likely, we'll have a temporary cul-de-sac right here,
Okay.
which we'll be doing on every phase.
Any questions for Mr. Lewis? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next item is also a information item, and it's Master Development Plan 04-14 for Clearbrook Business Center, submitted by Gray Wolf to develop 16.886 acres of land zone B3 Industrial Transition District with commercial industrial uses. The subject properties are located at 3625 Martinsburg Pike on the west side of Route 11, approximately 2,000 feet north of Hopewell Road, Route 672 in the Stonewall Magisterial District, and are identified by property identification numbers 33-A-122A and 33-A-123. Mrs. Perkins.
Again, thank you. This is the master plan for 16.8 acres. The properties were rezoned in 2006 with proffers. The location map is on the screen to your left. The 2 properties are outlined in black. They are shown in red, which is the B3 district. They have Interstate 81 along the rear of the property, and then Route 11 that runs along the frontage. Now, this is the master development plan that was included in your agenda. It shows the lane along Martinsburg Pike, as well as the internal road network and the proffered interparcel connections to the north and the south. So just to wrap, the master plan for Clearbrook Business Center, it's in conformance with the zoning ordinance as well as the rezoning from 2006. So this is also presented as an informational item, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Again, questions of Mrs. Perkins? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Any questions? Thank you. Our next item is also an information discussion item. I didn't mean, ma'am, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is when the commission does its work on an item that is solely for our purview at this point. Is Master Development Plan 05-14 Snowden Bridge Station, submitted by Gray Wolf to develop 91.82 acres of land zoned M1 light industrial with industrial uses. The subject properties are located at 1800 Martinsburg Pike near Interstate 81 north exit 317, bounded by CSX to the east, Redbud Route 661 to the south, and Martinsburg Pike Route 11 to the west in the Stonewall Magisterial District. There are many property identified, so what we will do is leave the description as is, and Mrs. Perkins will lead us through.
Again, thank you. Yes, there are a number of properties associated with this. There were 2 rezonings that covered this, one from 2005 and 2012. The location map, again, is on the screen to your left. Now, all the properties that are subject to the master plan are shown in black. We have Route 11 that runs along the front, and you have Interstate 81, the railroad. It may not work for me now. As you can see, the rail runs along the property, and you have Route 11, and then the future Snowden Bridge Boulevard. And this is the master plan that was included in your agenda. It shows the location of future Snowden Bridge Boulevard, the proffered Ezra Lane, as well as the land bays. So access to the site will be via Snowden Bridge Boulevard. That would align with an access point already approved with the North Stevenson rezoning, which is the 2005 rezoning. Now, the initial segment of Snowden Bridge Boulevard has already been constructed, and it aligns with the signalized intersection at Martinsburg Pike across from Rutherford Crossing Shopping Center. So again, this master plan is in conformance with rezonings 3 of 05 for North Stevenson and 1 of 2012 for Snowden Bridge Station. Again, this is presented as an informational item. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Again, any questions of Mrs. Perkins? Or Mr. Oates? Well, I think we've done it. Thank you so much. Ma'am, I would like to suggest if you've got a question regarding any of these items that Mrs. Perkins has dealt with, she'd be happy to speak with you after the meeting. Okay, I think I have a note from, I think we're at the end of our agenda, and I think I have a note from Mr. Lawrence that July 1st, the Southern, it's up there, sorry. So all the folks at home can see it. This will be a session on the Southern Frederick Area Plan, and it's July the 1st at 7 p.m. at Robert E. Ayler Middle School. And this will be coming to the conclusion of the consideration of the citizens who have worked on this particular plan, and we invite your coming. It's so nice to have people with us. So, I think that's it.
You could also cancel your meeting on July 2nd.
We have to cancel a meeting on July the 2nd.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I think that's it. We need to adjourn, folks.
Move for adjournment, Madam Chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.